Well, to quote the ever-so-wise Master Yoda, "At an end Andor is, and not long enough it was." Season 1 of Andor is practically flawless. I adore it. I would put it up there with The Empire Strikes Back and the final arc of Clone Wars as part of my holy trinity of Star Wars content. And honestly, Season 1 was so good that I kinda didn't even need Season 2 to live up to it. I cared about the plight of the rebellion more than ever, all thanks to Season 1. And the only thing I was really looking for in Season 2 was just finding out the ultimate fates of every character who doesn't appear in Rogue One. So on that level, Season 2 definitely delivered on my expectations in a very satisfying way. But on the other hand, I do ultimately have to say that, yeah, I don't think this season was quite as impeccably perfect as the first. And that's basically just for one reason and one reason alone. It's not the writing, or the performances, or the direction. Those are all easily on par with the first season. I'm talking about the fact that this is very blatantly 4 seasons of television smushed together into one. The show's creator, Tony Gilroy, has gone on record saying as much, mentioning that there was a 5-season plan for Andor that had to be condensed when Disney only greenlit one final season for them. As a result, the season doesn't have the room to be as cohesive and all-encompassing as Season 1, which masterfully laid out a story arc for Cassian, took its time to portray the slow Imperial takeover of Ferrix, while also getting you invested in the planet's plight, and generally just felt a lot more detailed and cohesive than this season. Don't get me wrong, this season still includes some of the best writing in all of Star Wars, and there are some absolutely phenomenal episodes and scenes. But it just doesn't quite hit the same when, by necessity to get all this story in, we constantly have to be jumping a year into the future every 3 episodes. Okay, time to talk about some details, so here's my full spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the season, I will be spoiling everything, so get on out of here and watch it, cause it's incredible. Okay, so the biggest sticking point for me is Mon Mothma. I feel like there was a lot on the table that could have been explored in terms of Perrin and Leeta's reactions to her denouncing Palpatine in front of the Senate and making her escape, which also resulted in some murders. We just never see how they react to this. Apparently it was on the cutting room floor before the season had to be condensed, and I'm upset about that. I especially felt that with Dedra finally confronting Luthen. An absolutely amazing scene, but damn it, I wanted to see the revelation where she found him. I wanted to see her reaction and the moment she decided to risk it all and impulsively try to take Luthen in herself. This season just feels like a highlight reel of what happens to these characters in the 4 years following Season 1. And I know it had to be, I don't blame the creative team at all, but man, there are so many scenes in this season that I know would have hit even harder if they were given more time. More Dedra and Krennic interactions would have made that final scene where he calls her out for girl bossing too close to the sun way more impactful. Kleya has some great moments in the final arc, but man, do I wish there was even more stuff centering around her and her relationship to Luthen, who kind of takes a back seat for most of the season until episode 10. Leeta is completely absent after her big marriage to what's-his-name in the first arc, and this could have been a great thread to follow up on, especially, like I said, in the wake of Mon risking it all and denouncing the Empire. The actual establishment of the rebel base on Yavin would have been so cool to see, but instead we flash forward a year and there it is, it's established. Oh well. Ultimately, all of these problems boil down to stuff that wasn't in the final season, for reasons that are completely out of Tony Gilroy's control. He did the best he could with the limited time he had. For the most part. There are actually a couple little nitpicks actually in the show that kinda bother me. I feel like they really neglected to give Cassian much interesting stuff to do until the second half of the season rolled around. I mean, that first arc especially, where he gets stuck with those rebel idiots, I get the intent behind that. It's showing how desperately the rebellion needs leadership. But god, those guys were so annoying. Did they have to be funny? Like, if they were actually funny, I'd excuse it. This show can do comedy. K2SO is as sharp as ever when he finally shows up. But those guys were just kind of trying too hard to be funny without actually succeeding. Truly tragic. The other thing that bugs me is that while I was very satisfied with most character fates, I thought killing off Cinta like that was kind of lazy. I mean, I didn't expect the space lesbians to live happily ever after or anything, but I don't know. I thought the scene where the guy accidentally shot her was a bit awkwardly directed directed and staged. And again, I didn't find her death as interesting as a more potent sacrifice would have been. I'm sure others will disagree though, and that's totally fine if you do. I'm not a ride or die about this opinion or anything. Okay, I think I've complained enough about the most critically acclaimed and beloved Star Wars show. So now let's actually talk about why it's still incredible. While the structure of the season loses a bit of the immediacy that season 1 had, the plot is still really well tied together by the events on Gorman. This is where the yearly skipping format actually really works, since we see the Empire's obsession with mining Gorman from its inception, to a little ways into their control of the planet, to finally the insanity of the Gorman massacre. It's so rare for Star Wars to make me sick to my stomach, but man did they pull it off with this magnificent episode. Oh, this wasn't in the script, but I actually forgot to mention, there's that other scene in the first arc that also made me sick to my stomach for very good reasons. But, you know, I don't know if it should have been there. I mean, Vader wouldn't have stood for it, just like he wouldn't have stood for the bricks and screws. Anyway, back to what I was saying in the script. Episode 8 with the Gorman Massacre was easily my favorite of the season, with episodes 9 and 10 not being too far behind. I adored Mon's stunning act of bravery in the Senate, and the escape was equally as thrilling. And it was so wonderful to get a bottle episode about Luthen and Clea that also moved the plot forward in a brilliant way. I was really scared that her trying to save him from the hospital wasn't part of the plan, and it was her getting too sentimental, which would lead to him having to kill her in order to protect the secrets they knew. So thank God she killed him instead. That came out wrong. Basically, I'm glad this appeared to be their plan from the beginning, and they stuck to it and succeeded, even if it was sad. Ultimately, we all knew Luthen wasn't gonna live to see that sunrise, and stabbing himself while Dedra wasn't looking was such a baller way to go out. It was absolutely all worth it for that intel, and it was a great send-off for his character. Speaking of send-offs, I'm honestly surprised at how many Andor original characters survived. Bix, Clea, Vel, Dedra, go women. The Bix thing was a stroke of brilliance. It reminded me of how Kim ultimately didn't die in Better Call Saul. It's really refreshing for a female love interest from a prequel to not die and instead go on to live their own life separate from the main character. And it made for such a gut punch of a reveal when she tells him she'll await the future they have together after the war. Yeah, the ending of episode 9 made me sob. Again, I only wish his reaction was stretched out a bit longer, but oh well, he's got his new droid buddy now, so it's okay. I especially can't get over what a good fate Dedra got. Well, not a good fate, but an incredibly fitting one. That's what happens when you get too cozy with fascists. Everything she did, all to be branded a traitor and wind up in a similar prison to Narkina 5. Oh, how delicious. Cyril is no slouch either in the completely fitting fate department. I genuinely thought he was gonna have a moment where he realized it was his duty to fight this fascist regime that he helped all these years and join the rebellion. But no, his fixation on the one guy who ruined his life, who doesn't even remember him, is a perfect summation of how pathetic he is as a person. Incredible. For such an important episode depicting such an important event, I'm so glad it was named Who Are You? It really sells how crucial this moment is from a character perspective. Honestly, even though I think season 1 was definitely better, episodes 8, 9, and 10 of this season are practically flawless and may just be the best 3-episode run in the whole show. 11 and 12 were really good too, but they more so felt like standard Andor fare to me. I especially didn't really get into how heavily the final episode jammed everyone to be in their Rogue One starting positions. I mean, it obviously makes sense, but here's the thing. I rewatched Rogue One after finishing this show, and I just still don't think it's that great. I don't know, I'm certainly a lot sadder about what happens to Cassian in the end, and that third act is still incredible in general. But ultimately, this was never really Cassian's movie. They build up his role as the messenger a lot in the show, but everything in the text of Rogue One supports Jyn Erso as the true messenger, who Cassian just helps along in her journey. Whatever, I don't want to get too much into my Rogue One opinions, because ultimately, this is about Andor, and how wonderful a job they did at concluding these characters' stories, and making me care even further about this universe than I already did. I mentioned in my season 1 review that this was the show that really made me hate the Empire as much as you're supposed to in the original trilogy. And I think season 2 expanded on that by really building up how terrifying of a concept the Death Star is. I mean, let's be honest. In A New Hope, it's an intimidating weapon, yes, but you don't really feel the full, realistic impact of an evil fascist regime blowing up an entire planet. It just feels like an element of a pulpy space opera that doesn't matter as much as the interpersonal stories of Luke, Leia, and Han. But getting to witness the Empire firsthand massacring everyone in Gorman, that in turn makes their oppression and genocide feel real. That's what really makes it click that, oh, they just killed billions of people in a single shot. Again, we always knew that about the destruction of Alderaan, but this show goes out of its way to make that moment feel so much more potent. It also enhances the terror of this thing in Rogue One, obviously. I'm not going to pretend that Andor does nothing to enhance the viewing experience of Rogue One. I just think ultimately, at the end of the day, Rogue One has a lot of problems that are far more noticeable when you compare it to Andor. It's kind of like Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. Except at least Revenge of the Sith was about Anakin, so you really feel the brunt of the enhancements from the show with that movie, compared to Rogue One where Cassian is just one piece of a larger puzzle. Okay, I've rambled for long enough. Bottom line is, Andor is amazing. I truly believe there will never be another Star Wars show like it. I'm sure there could still be good ones down the line, but Star Wars as a whole has joined that MCU, Pixar, and Disney animation pile, where I'm not really gonna anticipate new releases from them and assume they'll be good automatically. I'll be open to enjoying them in the future if other people say they're good and I watch the movies or shows and agree, but I'm kinda done following Star Wars as a whole. I don't think I'm gonna watch Ahsoka Season 2. It's time to accept that it's just not my thing and move on to other stuff. So, much like Guardians 3, this is really the end of an era for me. The end of my personal investment in every single thing this universe does. If you enjoy the new Star Wars stuff that comes out after this, that's great, and I'm not gonna say you're an idiot like some Andor fans tend to do. But after this wonderful, harrowing, traumatizing ride, I'm ready to get off the train here. Great show. And in terms of the score I would give this season, I honestly don't know. It's not a 10 out of 10 like season 1 was, and I feel like there was enough that I felt was missing from the show that could lean it towards an 8 out of 10, but then again it had some of the best moments in all of television this year, so it's probably close to a 9 out of 10. I think I'm gonna break out the decimals just this once and give Andor season 2 an 8.5 out of 10. I'll definitely rewatch the season at some point this year, so if I end up bumping it up to a 9, I'll let you know in the 2025 TV show ranking. Oh, and if this had been the original 5-season plan, it probably would have been 10s across the board, just for the record. I do still think the best episode of Andor is One Way Out, and nothing in this new season quite reaches the insane heights of Kino Loy and Luthen's speeches from that episode. But they come pretty damn close. Anyway, that's about it. Good night, Yavin 4.